There's a drink in your fridge right now that would have made almost every human who ever lived violently miserably sick. A glass of milk. You pour it on cereal. You tip it in your coffee. You don't give it a second thought. But drinking milk as a grown adult is one of the strangest things a human body can do. And for almost the entire span of our species, nobody's body could do it. Not your great-grandmother's, not hers. Go back far enough, and a single glass of milk would have doubled your ancestor over with cramps. So how did milk go from poison to every adult on Earth to the most boring thing in your kitchen? There's a chemist in England who spent years scraping grease out of 9,000-year-old pots to find out. What he dug up rewrites what the word natural even means. This is the one food your ancestors never ate, explained. Start with your own body, because you did this too. When you were a baby, you were a milk drinking machine. Every human baby is. You made an enzyme called lactase, the little tool that breaks apart the sugar in milk so your gut can actually use it. Breast milk, formula, the works, no problem. Then, somewhere around age 4 or 5, for almost every human who has ever lived, a switch flips. The body stops making lactase. It decides milk is a baby thing and quietly shuts the factory down. After that, a big glass of milk means bloating, cramps, and a very bad afternoon. Here's the part nobody tells you. That shutdown is not a defect. That's the default. That is how nearly every mammal on the planet works. A grown cat, a grown wolf, a grown chimp, pour them a bowl of milk and they'll regret it. For 200,000 years, adult humans were exactly the same. Milk was a food you physically aged out of, which means the weird ones aren't the people who can't drink milk. The weird ones are the people who can, and to this day, roughly 2 out of every 3 adults alive still can't. The normal human, statistically, is you at 40 getting wrecked by a milkshake. So picture the first farmers, about 10,000 years ago. They've just tamed goats, sheep, and cows. Suddenly there's milk everywhere, warm, free, refillable, and the grown-ups can't drink it. So what did they do? They cheated. They let the milk go sour on purpose. Ferment milk into cheese or yogurt, and the bugs eat most of that troublesome sugar for you. The first cheesemakers in history weren't chasing a delicacy. They were desperate adults trying to get milk into their bodies without spending the night doubled over. Remember that. It matters in a minute. Now, meet Richard Evershed. Bristol chemist. He wanted an answer to something you've probably never once wondered. When did humans actually start using milk? You can't ask a caveman, but Evershed realized you can ask their trash. Fat soaks into clay and stays there for millennia. So he and his team scraped the grease out of thousands of ancient pots, shards from hundreds of dig sites across Europe. Then they tested it, one pot at a time, for the chemical fingerprint of milk. And milk was everywhere, in pots 9,000 years old. Ancient Europe was drowning in the stuff. The same white liquid sitting in your fridge door right now, 10,000 years early, which set up a genuinely strange problem. Because when his colleagues went looking for the gene that lets adults drink milk, it was barely there. Here's the gap that broke the whole story open. The milk was in the pots 9,000 years ago, but the gene that lets a grown adult drink milk without suffering? That's where a geneticist named Mark Thomas comes in. Thomas reads history out of bones, DNA pulled straight from the teeth of people who died thousands of years ago. He tracked the milk mutation across the centuries, watching for the moment it caught fire. And the answer? It doesn't become common until about 3,000 years ago. Sit with that. Your ability to drink milk is younger than the wheel, younger than writing, younger than the oldest pyramid. It's one of the most recent upgrades in the entire human body, and it left a 4,000-year gap. For 40 centuries, humans were surrounded by milk they mostly couldn't drink. They sipped it anyway and paid for it, or turned it into cheese to survive it. So the obvious question, if they'd had milk that whole time, why did the gene finally win? For years, everyone assumed the easy answer: milk is good for you. You've probably been told this yourself. Bones, calcium, protein. Calcium, protein, fat, easy calories. Of course the milk drinkers thrived, except that answer doesn't fit the timeline at all. The milk was there for thousands of years and the gene barely moved. Something else had to flip the switch. In 2022, Thomas and Evershed put the whole picture together, and the real answer is darker and far more interesting. Famine and plague. Think about what milk actually does to a body that can't handle it. Normally, it's a miserable afternoon. But now imagine you're already starving. The harvest failed, there's nothing else. That extra milk running straight through you isn't an inconvenience anymore. Dehydration, on top of starvation, on top of whatever disease is sweeping the camp. That's a killer. So when catastrophe hit, the rare person who could drink milk had one clean source of calories left. Their neighbors were losing theirs the worst possible way. Milk wasn't a health food, it was survival insurance. The gene is a scar left by 10,000 years of famine and disease. And if you can drink milk today, that scar is in you. And here's the wildest part. This happened more than once. In Europe, in Africa, in the Middle East, different peoples separately stumbled into different mutations that did the exact same thing. Evolution ran the same brutal experiment on humans at least 5 separate times. And 5 separate times, the milk drinkers were the ones still standing. That kind of thing leaves a mark. Scientists comb human DNA for signs of recent, powerful evolution, genes that spread fast because they meant life or death. The milk gene sits right at the top of that list, one of the loudest, freshest fingerprints of natural selection anywhere in your body, which means, in a very real way, our species is still in the middle of learning how to drink milk. You're not the finished product. You're a work in progress with a glass in your hand. Open your fridge. Look at the milk in the door. If you can drink that glass without your stomach turning on you, you didn't earn it and you didn't choose it. You inherited it from one specific ancestor thousands of years ago, born with a glitch that jammed the milk switch permanently on. Everyone alive today who drinks milk without crying is descended from a handful of people who survived a famine that killed the ones beside them. That latte you had this morning, the cheese on your sandwich, the ice cream tonight, every bit of it runs on a genetic accident handed down from someone who was starving. And it's uneven. If your family came from Northern Europe, you basically won the milk lottery. Barely 1 in 10 of you get sick. If your roots run through East Asia, the odds flip almost all the way over. That ordinary glass of milk in your fridge door, the most forgettable thing in your whole kitchen, is a trophy. It's a receipt from the deadliest 10,000 years your family ever lived through. Every sip is a message from someone who watched a famine take the people around them. They kept their body running on the one thing left, and they lived long enough to hand you the reason you pour cereal without a second thought. Milk didn't survive because it fed us. We survived because of milk. Every time you drink a glass without even tasting it, you're doing something almost no human who ever lived could do. 10,000 years of catastrophe, distilled into a splash of white you don't even notice going down. You do it without blinking. Satire about fictional cavemen in a make-believe jungle. Please don't sue Og. Now Og wants to know from the tribe. Are you one of the milk-drinking mutants, or did your ancestors never keep the switch on? Tell the comments.